All right, we are live. All right, everybody, good evening and welcome to our presentation tonight on self-publishing. Mark Pinto here with you at Phoenixville Public Library, and our special guest, special return guest tonight, Eric Simmons, comes to us from the Atlanta, Georgia area where he lives with his wife. His 4 self-published books have appeared 61 times on Amazon's bestsellers list since January of 2019. Eric is the CEO of ESE Incorporated, a website development firm specializing in creating sites for compensating eligible college athletes, high school athletes, authors, poets, and others who seek to present their personal brand on the internet. A former college athlete, Eric enjoys sports and public speaking. He self-publishes under his full name, Eric Otis Simmons, and recently branded his written works as ESE Tomes. Since January of 2018, 141 copies of his self-published works have been placed in 114 libraries worldwide, including here at Phoenixville Public Library. They didn't even have to twist my arm to do that. We're really glad to have him with us again tonight. We welcome now Eric Simmons. All yours.
Well, Mark, thank you and Phoenixville Public Library for having me. And I'm absolutely thrilled that you have guests here to learn a little bit about self-publishing. I'm going to put on a little bit of a PowerPoint slide so I can walk you through some things. I don't know if you can see me. Or Mark, you know what? Do we need to share screens?
You need to share your screen, yes.
Okay, let's do that. Okay.
Oh, and I forgot to mention, folks, to please hold your questions until after the presentation. Great, looks good.
So welcome to the self-publishing session. Mark is giving you a little bit of information about me. The one thing that I want to share with each of you is prior to self-publishing my first book, I had no experience whatsoever with regard to book writing or the publishing industry or how to publish at all. I knew nothing about it. So what brings us here today to try to learn a little bit more about self-publishing? Well, there's been some interesting studies done over the years, and one was conducted that was written, an article was written in the New York Times back in 2002 by Joe Epstein. And in this study, it was found that 81% of Americans feel they have a book in them and that they should write it. Fast forward to 2015, and Dr. Jane McGonigal, a New York Times bestselling author, conducted her own study and found that 90% of Americans wanted to write a book. Benjamin Franklin is attributed with using a phrase that goes something like this: either write something worth reading or do something worth writing. So what I'd like to accomplish this evening are several things. I want to take you through the methodology that I've used these past going on 4 years to self-publish my books. I'll share with you resources that are available to you. I'll talk about the importance of budgeting. We'll look at how you can go about pricing your self-published book, excuse me, and then distributors that are out there that are available to you that can get your book out into the marketplace in front of customers. And then lastly, some ideas and some things I'm doing on marketing my books. So the goal is to demystify this world called self-publishing, and then to give you enough info at a high level so that you'll know what it's all about. And then I also want to reduce your learning curve. After I wrote my book on self-publishing, I took a step back and I asked myself, had I had this resource, how would it have benefited me? And I concluded I could have saved 25 to 33% of my time just by having a resource handy that I could go back to as I was writing my first book. So before we begin, I'd just like to ask each of you, between 2005 and 2017, on November 11th of 2005 through about September, October of 2017, there were some significant events that occurred during these dates. And I'd like to ask you, just take a second or two to try to see if any of you can tell me what's significant about these. Anyone want to take a guess?
Feel free to unmute if you know the answer.
Okay, if no one knows, let me tell you what these dates represent. They represent the number of times I procrastinated on writing my first book. Now, keep in mind, the studies show that anywhere from 81 to 90% of Americans have some type of interest in writing a book. I had so many starts and stops, it took me 13 years to get to the point where I finally moved forward on writing my book. So in September of 2016, I finally got my first 10 pages of my memoir written down. So what happens? Why do people have, or so many people have, an interest in self-publishing, but they don't do it? Well, there could be a number of reasons. In my case, when I was in corporate America, I would use, well, I'm too busy, I'm traveling too much, I'm coaching youth sports, I just don't have time. And some other reasons, I've had people tell me they feel uncomfortable marketing anything to anyone. Some people may fear rejection. They may feel that, well, if I write a book, people don't like it. I have a cousin here in Atlanta. She is a terrific poet and a poetess, and she is just scared to death to put her poetry out there in the marketplace. She doesn't want to do it, and I mean, she could be probably a best-selling individual. So there are a variety of reasons why we procrastinate, perhaps, on getting our first book out into the marketplace. So how did I overcome 13 years of procrastination? I had always had in the back of my mind, if I were to write a book, I wanted to have some genealogical and family history in it. And people for over a 10 to 20 year time span had told me, well, you ought to also share some of your experience in corporate America, where I traveled domestically, internationally. I closed a $25 million sale in Hong Kong, a $1 million sale in Brussels, $500,000 in Paris. So people said, you've got something that you should share with other people. So, but still, I hadn't written my book, 13 years. And I was at a lunch meeting, and our CEO happened to have a conversation with us about how he had discovered his ancestry through ancestry.com, and he found his family crest. And he turned and he asked me, he said, Eric, where are you from? And I said, Little Rock, Arkansas. Well, when I got back home, I was so disturbed by my answer because I'm from, now I've learned, Nigeria, Africa. So now that was sort of a tipping point for me. It made me realize it's time to get started writing my book. So I wanted to have a leave behind for my children, provide them with information on their history, their heritage, the genealogy, and I wanted to share my life story with others, particularly of how I overcame obstacles in life, in corporate America, in sports, and how I was able to overcome those obstacles to achieve success. So that's what got me out of my procrastinating mode. And I also felt if my book was good, then I could probably make a little bit of money as well. So since 2017 until today, I've got, as Mark mentioned, I've got 4 paperback self-published books. I've got 1 ebook where I combined my first 2 books. I've also written an article on how to get your book into libraries, which, excluding ads, has become the top search result on Google out of over 2 billion results. But you have to Google getting your book in the libraries, and excluding the ads, you will see my article. My book, since Mark got my bio, my business has actually grown. I'm now in 127 libraries worldwide. Mark mentioned Phoenixville Public Library has two of my books now. They've got my memoir and they have my book called Self-Publishing Toolkit, which I'll touch on just a little bit. Three library services companies are marketing my books, and they have been on Amazon's bestsellers list now 65 times since 2019. Globally, the books are in the US, Canada, the UK, China, Denmark, and Germany. 7 of the 25 largest public libraries in America have my self-published books. 9 of the largest, 100 largest libraries have the book, and the Royal Library in Copenhagen, Denmark also has my self-publishing book. They've transitioned it over, I believe, to the University of Copenhagen. So how do you go about self-publishing? For me, the first thing I did was, in the back of my mind, I felt like I wanted to self-publish a book, but I wasn't sure. So I created a T-chart whereby I put publishing, going to a publisher on the left, or self-publishing on the right. And I came up with the pros and cons of each. In the publishing world, there's great prestige if a publisher will pick up your book. And your book is also more likely to get in bookstores all around the country and maybe perhaps around the world. Some of the downsides, however, are it can be a slow process. It can involve agents. You might have to get an agent involved. You're dealing with contracts. The royalty rates after you receive an advance, they aren't all that great. Let's say, as an example, if you were to receive a $10,000 advance from a publisher, you wouldn't make any additional money until $10,000 worth of books were sold. And then after that, you start making royalties. And the whole scenario can be a little complex. So I was looking for something that gave me a little more flexibility and control over the process, if you will. So I found that on the self-publishing side. And in terms of royalties, my current book royalties range anywhere from 16% up to 70%, with my up to 70% on the ebook side with Amazon Kindle. If an individual buys a book off of my website, my royalty is 100%. Some of the downsides, however, I found with self-publishing when I was doing my research is that everything is on you. I view it as like you're the captain of a ship, and when things slow down, you don't have propellers to move you forward. You have to get down there and do all the rowing. So you're guiding and navigating, you're doing the rowing, the whole job of getting your book sold and getting people confident enough to buy it. Those aspects fall on you. And also, when I first began in 2017, there was somewhat of a stigma about self-publishers. And it was based on the fact that some individuals had written some very poor works, and that stuck with people. And to give you an example, early on when I started contacting libraries, this was about mid-2018, I sent an email to several libraries, and I received feedback from 2 of the librarians that, hey, we don't buy books from self-publishers. Now what's happened, fast forward about 3 years, and self-publishing has taken on a brand new look and feel for a lot of people. And that's because the quality of work that's being generated is much better. And if you look on Amazon, a lot of their top selling books are coming now from self-publishers. And another thing that's happened, a lot of authors that were with traditional publishing houses, they have shifted to self-publishing. So those are some of the dynamics that we're seeing in the marketplace. So how do you get started, and what are some of your resources? I would encourage you to continue doing what you're doing tonight, and that's learning a little bit about self-publishing and educating yourself on self-publishing and what it's all about. Some resources that I highly recommend, one would be the Alliance of Independent Authors, or ALLI. They have a plethora of information on self-publishing. Joanna Penn, who wrote the article for me that took off on Google, she has great information on her website as well. I would also encourage you to learn the lingo. Some people call us independent authors, some call us indies, some call us self-publishers. but also learn some of the terminology in the markets that you plan to sell your book. To give you an example, I sent out a mailing to a group of libraries, and one librarian wrote me back and says, "Eric, thank you for the information on your book. We've turned it over to our collections department for review." My first reaction was one of my children had brought a book home from school that we'd had in the house for over 15 years, and the library wanted their money and they were turning my book over to collections. And apparently it went to some national database, and this librarian that I happened to write found out and said, "Hey, we're turning it over." Well, I was going to make a phone call to the library and question them about the whole matter, but something told me to Google what collections might mean in the world of libraries. And sure enough, it represents the resources and all the items that patrons come in and have access to within a library. So I would have had a potentially embarrassing moment had I called a librarian and I had been asking about a payment type of scenario because I didn't understand what collections meant. I would also encourage you, as you go through the process of getting up to speed on self-publishing, don't overanalyze it. You're going to be learning as you go. I've been doing it. In May, it'll be 4 years. I continue to learn. I learn something new all the time. So don't, I use the terminology analysis paralysis. Try to avoid that. Something else that will happen when you get ready to self-publish or get your book out there, you will find that there are a lot of sharks in the waters. And I use the analogy that self-publishers are like baby seals. We're new to the environment. We're getting out. We're learning how to swim. We're getting familiar with our environment. And there are a lot of people out there that will take advantage of you. And you can Google, individuals for assistance on self-publishing. You'll find companies that will make guarantees, and there are no guarantees. So how do you get around perhaps interfacing with someone that doesn't mean you the best? I use Alley. Alley has on its website a tool called Best and Worst Self-Publishing Services Reviewed, as rated by the Alliance of Independent Authors. Whenever I get a phone call, and I don't know, some companies have gotten my cell phone number, but whenever I get a phone call from an entity saying, "Hey, I understand your memoir is doing great. We can help take it to another level," the first thing I do is go on to Alley's website and see what Alley has to say about that company. They use a color code scheme. So green means excellent, blue means Alley recommends them. An orangish color means they've got mixed feelings about the company. Then they have a caution, and then red means be careful. They don't have a good reputation. So I use that resource anytime I get ready to engage with a new business related to any of my books. I would also encourage you to get familiar with how your genre performs. And the reason why I say that is, I'll give you a perfect example. I've written a memoir and I have a self-help book, or I would call the How to Self-Publish book somewhat of a self-help book. Now, Query Tracker views the memoirs and self-help as two of the most popular nonfiction categories. Well, that's great. So that says I've gotten my books in some good categories. But the other thing it suggests to me is I'm in some very competitive categories. So now, if I've got a memoir and President Barack Obama has a memoir, I'm probably not going to do as well as he. But I use this genre information to go and say, okay, what area underneath memoirs may I go target? I may, because my memoir is about my life being raised by a single mother, I may target my memoir towards single mothers as an example. So I use the genre information to strategize on where I might go try to sell and market my books. I also look at, and I would encourage you to do some research on how well the genre is performing that you're planning to place your book in. And the reason why I do that is similar to the genre. ranking analysis. I want to see if my genre is performing well, and if it's doing extremely well. I know there's a lot of competition, so I might look for areas that I can get my book introduced in where I won't be facing as much competition. So I just like personally doing background work to know what I'm getting into. And I would encourage you, just do some high level research. I think you'll find it beneficial. I'm extremely big on book budgeting. You can Google, and I don't think you will find any self-publisher that will talk about profitability. You will hear people talk about, oh, I sold 10,000 books, but and one self-published author actually has a blog where he wrote, he sold 11,000 books, but only made $3,000. Well, think about that. If you sell 11,000 books, and I'll use my average royalty rate of $3, he should have made $33,000. So why did he only make 3,000? So I think it's because of advertising budget, spending too much perhaps on advertising, or placing your monies in areas that aren't going to give you the greatest rate of return. I had set a goal in 2017 when I wrote my first book that I wanted to be profitable in 3 years. And fortunately, as of December 31, 2020, all of my books plus related items helped move me into a category where my works are now profitable. Now, underline related items because the leading self-publishers I found do several things. One is they have multiple books. Some have as many as 20 and up. Others are doing things like podcasts. They're getting out of the box. And so they're adding items or services that complement their books. And that's the route I've taken. So in addition to my books, I've got some resources now that will help other self-publishers learn more about how they can get their book in the libraries. That's almost like a secondary business. And so what that does for me is if my book sales are low, then hopefully my library services will help balance things out. But so that's how the successful ones are doing it. They're selling more than one book, they have multiple books, and or they have some additional services or capabilities that they're building around their books. So how much does all this stuff cost? I put this up so that you can see what I spent on my first book. And basically I spent almost $700 to get Not Far from the Tree out the door. And that's probably, I think that's probably pretty good. But here's the lesson I learned. I was so excited about my book, I wanted to give it to all my friends and family. So what happened, I ended up spending about $300 giving away books. And here's the way that broke out. It was about $3.61 for Amazon to print the book. And then they had to ship it to me. And then I had to pay tax on it. And then I spent another $3 to ship the book to, say, my cousin in Akron, Ohio. So each book that I was giving away was costing me $10.48. So I spent $300 on book giveaways. So now using my $3 royalty amount, it would take me 100 book sales to break even on what I gave away. So my lesson learned was do not give away your books. Don't give them away because you will lose money. Another thing that I learned when I was creating this budget chart for you was with regard to ISBNs, which is the identifying number of your book, there are two avenues for you. You can get what I call a universal IBM where you purchase it and that IBM is tied to your company or your company name or your individual name, however you set yourself up when you start to self-publish and sell your book. Or you can get a free ISBN from places like Amazon. But what happens when you get a free ISBN, the company that provides it to you, they can use their name as the publisher of record. So Amazon used to put Amazon on there. I noticed tonight before the presentation, I wanted to see if they were still doing it. They'll just say independently published. However, Blurb, a company that I use, they put publisher, Blurb. So that's something for you to consider, whether you want an ISBN with your own company name or you want to get one free. Another thing that some of the companies do, and you have to watch their fine print, and Amazon does this. Amazon says, okay, if you get my free ISBN, Eric, ISBN, you can't use that anywhere else. And one of the things that Amazon does is if you want to sell your book to libraries, which I've had about anywhere from 35 to 37 libraries buy my books through Amazon, if you don't use their ISBN, they will not allow you to sell your books to libraries through them. So some of these companies have catch-22. So just be sure when you're signing up for an ISBN, just take a moment to read through the fine print to decide which way you want to go. Now, when writing your book, how did I get started and how do I go about writing my books? One of the first things I do is I create an outline. And that outline not only helps me stay on course, but as I'm completing my book and as I'm making progress through the chapters and the subsections, I'm marking those off. And psychologically, that's a good thing because it helps me see that I'm making progress. For my first book, I spent hours trying to figure out which font I should use. And I can share with you, you don't have to spend hours trying to figure out which font to use. You can Google it and then try to figure out, you can Google a font for your genre, try just by Googling most popular fonts for short fiction or most popular fonts for romance. And once you get the answers, go with either the top one or two, number one or number two. Now, one of the reasons why font selection was such a struggle for me was because in my research, I had learned that readers of romance books like a certain font, readers of memoirs, they like a certain font, readers of thrillers, they like a certain font. So that's why I spent so much time researching. So, but don't spend that amount of time on it, just Google it. And I would encourage you just go with the number one or number two font choice for your genre. Also, set aside time to write. When I early retired and decided to finally write my first book, I set aside 4 hours a day. There were days when I couldn't achieve that and I might only spend 1 hour. But by having a set time frame, it put me under a schedule because book writing and self-publishing, it's a project. It's like building a house. Once you start, you have to lay the foundation. You have to get the materials. You have to construct it. You have to decide how you want the exterior to look, how you want that interior to look. So it's very similar. So anytime you're building a home, there's a schedule that's put in place. And so when you're writing or self-publishing your book, try to establish a schedule for yourself as well. And choose a method to get your thoughts on paper. I don't type well at all. And so because I don't type well at all, after the third day of starting my first book, I had only gotten 1 page done. But fortunately, I had ordered about 2 years prior some speech to text software called Dragon. And I dusted off the software and I began using it. And it's intuitive to the extent that once it became familiar with how I write emails, how I write notes and things of that nature, it recognized my writing style. And as I would dictate, it could almost figure out the next thing I was going to say. I have also observed over these last 3 years, Microsoft's speech product has gotten much, much better, so much better to the extent my book on Self-Publisher's Toolkit, which Phoenixville Public Library just purchased, I use Microsoft speech to text for the entire book. So the quality of that product has gotten dramatically better. So if you want to enhance and improve your productivity, think about speech to text. One of the things, here's something that I did. I also set a target for the number of pages that I wanted for my book. It became apparent to me writing a memoir that I could be easily over 300 pages. And I said, no, that's too many pages. So I decided on 200 pages. And what that did was it caused me to take out extraneous information. It caused me to really think about, is the information that I have thus far, does it have impact? Will it flow? Will people be interested in it? Something else that I learned after I wrote my book and presented it to companies to be self-published or to be printed and distributed was that at certain demarcation points, the cost to print your book goes up. So as an example, if it costs 32 cents for Amazon to print pages 1 through 200 of my book, at page 201, that cost might jump to 34 cents per page. So if you think you're going to be writing a very large book, you may want to write a large book, or you may say, hey, let me do this. I'll make a volume 1, and then I'll make a volume 2. Or if you're writing fiction, you might create a series. So if it's a romance book, you might start with book 1, then book 2, etc. And again, the self-publishers that I've seen that are really successful, they have multiple books. And one of the things that happens to me when I'm writing is when I get on a roll, and when you get on a roll, don't stop. Just keep going. Even if you have some information that you feel that, well, maybe this doesn't fit right now in this area of the book, don't delete it. Because what I found is, and what I do is, if a thought comes to my mind as I'm dictating, and I realize that doesn't flow, it doesn't make sense here, I copy and paste that information in Word, and then I put it at the very end of my book. I put it on, let's say if I'm on page 3, I'll make 7 blank pages, and I will put extraneous thoughts at the bottom on page 10. And what I found is 70% of the time, that information that's at the bottom, I end up going back and using it. So my mind, mentally, what was happening, I was a little bit ahead of myself. And that later on in the book, I found that I did need that information. So don't throw away your thoughts, keep them until you get further through your book or to the end, and then you'll know whether you did or didn't need that information. Proofread your book regularly. I proofread my work exhaustively. I use Grammarly as well to check my sentence structure and grammatical errors. Writer's block is something that happens to most writers. I experienced it just about with every book, particularly my memoir. I had to get away for about 2 weeks. But what I found is I view writer's block as being analogous to having a scenario where you've had an adrenaline rush and you're at a high focus level, and then all of a sudden the event is over and your adrenaline drops down and you're absolutely exhausted. I think that's what happens, at least for me, I believe that's what happens when I'm writing. I am so amped up, I'm concentrating, I'm on the computer for an extended amount of time, and my body over a period of time is starting to tire and wear down. So what I've learned to do is I drink a lot of water when I'm writing, so that I have to get up and get away from the computer for periods of time, or either I might take a walk, and I reward myself if I do something like today. I completed 2 chapters, but I try to do things to break the monotony so that writer's block just won't completely weigh me down. And then the last thing that I've learned to do is, if you get bogged down, go back to your purpose for writing. Remember, my purpose for writing my memoir was to have a leave behind for my children and to share my story with others. So when you refocus on what that original purpose was that caused you to sit down to begin writing, that'll reinvigorate you, I feel, and get you back on track and out of that writer's block scenario that you might find yourself in. So how does this self-publishing flow look? What I tried to do is put together a flow chart for you to just kind of give you an idea how things flow. So you're at the top, you're the self-publisher. When you've gotten your book ready, you're going to introduce it to a company that has what's called a self-publishing platform. This is a tool that's going to take your book and put it into a final product. And these companies go by different names. They can be called print-on-demand providers if they are a print book distributor or company. They might be called aggregators. They might call themselves aggregators. They might call themselves publishers. But these are companies that will help you self-publish a book. Everyone that I use, I go through companies that help me self-publish for free. They don't charge me for their services. So some examples of who these companies are that have these self-publishing platforms are Amazon and their Kindle Direct Publishing Group, or KDP. Barnes and Nobles has a group called Barnes and Noble Press. Ingram Content Group. Ingram Content Group is the world's largest wholesale book distributor. I had never heard of the company in my life, but people in the book industry, they know who Ingram is, and many, many libraries tend to buy from Ingram Content Group. So each of these companies then that you take your book to, that's going to help you self-publish your book, they have a sales channel. So as an example, Amazon, not only do they have an online sales channel that people can buy your book from, but they also distribute your book to entities like libraries, bookstores, and others. So does Barnes and Noble. And then you have some of these self-publishing platform companies that distribute to just segments such as bookstores and libraries. But these companies that you'll end up using, then they are the resource that helps get your book to the end customer for purchase. So that's sort of the flow. It goes from you to the company that you use to in the case of print books, to help you get your book printed and distributed through one of their channels to get to your customers or potential customers. So how do you identify these companies? I tend to go with the brand names. So again, they might be called print-on-demand providers, aggregators, distributors, but the ones you're familiar with Amazon. I mentioned Ingram. We know Barnes and Nobles. Blurb is another company that I've come to learn I do business with on my print book side. eBooks, you've got Amazon, but there are other companies that I never heard of, but they have a presence in the self-publishing world. Companies like Draft to Digital, Smashwords, StreetLib, Publish Drive. So each of these 8 companies are the companies that I currently use for my self-publishing, and I don't pay any of them for their services. Now, they take out their fee perhaps when you sell your book. They might take on the ebook side 10, 20%, or Amazon on the print book side, they're taking out their cost to print the book and to distribute it. So they take out their piece, but they don't, well, I guess in a way they do charge you because they're taking it out, but to use their tools, they don't charge you for the use of the tools. Now that you have finished your book and you've identified your aggregator or your distributor that you're going to present your book to, they're going to ask you for certain information. They're going to ask you for what's called your metadata. And that's information about your book. And the way I view metadata, it's like a luggage tag. So if your luggage comes down the ramp and you've got another piece of luggage that looks just like yours, how are you going to identify it? You're going to identify it with that luggage tag. So that's what metadata is. It's the differentiator that distinguishes your book from someone else's book. So that metadata includes a description of your book. What is your book about? It includes the contents of your book. That's what you're going to be uploading to these service providers. It includes the front and back cover, or just the front cover if it's an ebook, your ISBN, your keywords. And these keywords are how people are going to find your book. And I'll show you something on Amazon. If you've ever looked for a book on Amazon, you're probably familiar with the keyword search. And then they're going to ask you about your categories. In other words, it's called a BISAC code. But you don't have to worry about all of that. Basically, they're going to provide that for you. But a BISAC information is what type of book. So using my memoir as an example, the BISAC code that would be associated with it would relate to biography and autobiography. And because my book is a memoir, then it's / personal memoir. So if you ever want to know what BISAC codes are, you can go on www.bisac.org and they'll show you. But each of these providers usually has a tool where you just pick and choose. You're going down and looking at the BISAC information and you just pick and choose the one that's applicable for your book. So you'll also upload the price that you want to charge for your book. And generally some will ask you for a little brief bio, author bio. And the end result is what, using Amazon as an example, is what you see on the right-hand side of the screen. That is my Amazon, excuse me, that's my Amazon authors page. Underneath it, you can see there's got a place where they have my bio, they have all of my titles, and they have the pricing, and then I have a section where I actually have my blog feeding from my book website over to Amazon. But this page got created from the metadata that I provided Amazon. Keywords. Keywords are important because that's how people on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, and other places, and Google, that's how they're going to find your book. So keywords are important. I used to use Google Trends to try to figure out how popular keywords were. And for my first self-published book, I put the word self-published, and Google Trends showed me that people actually prefer the word self-published. It's more popular. But I learned that Amazon actually is the best place to find search words because they are the world's largest bookstore. So as an example, for this example, what I started doing was typing in how to self-pub, P-U. I was going to type in how to self-publish. And you can see the top keywords. So the first preference in Amazon, in their algorithm, and this is the keyword that apparently gets the most hits, was how to self-publish a children's book. The one right underneath it is how to self-publish. So now in my keyword search for Self-Publisher's Toolkit on Amazon, you can use a single word or a phrase. So one of my keyword searches is how to self-publish. So you can use Amazon and see, based on your book, your genre, or whatever your book is about, you can start typing in keywords related to your book to see what are the most popular search terms on Amazon. And then you would want to incorporate those in your Amazon metadata, right? So that's a quick way to find out about keywords. And the great thing about self-publishing is, if you don't feel your keywords are getting you business on any of these online retail stores, you can go back and change your keywords. You can also go back and change your price anytime. If you feel your price is too low, you can raise it. If you feel it's too high, you can lower it. That's one of the things I love about self-publishing is you've got flexibility. You are the captain of the ship. So you can make the changes because you're in charge. Pricing your book, I struggled mightily with this with my first book. I had no idea. I had no idea what my book was worth. I didn't know how to price it. So what I've come to learn is I try to look for books in the same genre of the type book that I've just written. I try to find books with the same number of pages. I look for books that have gotten good reviews, and I see what those authors out there are charging, because I want my books to be competitive with theirs. And I take the average of what I found, and I generally use Amazon to figure out my book pricing. I also try to maintain consistency on my pricing across all of these aggregators that I'm using, because if one aggregator, if I have the price higher at one aggregator than another, I don't think that looks very good. So I try to be consistent across the board. And also, something just to consider, it's not a big impact factor, but I never considered this with my first print book. I never thought about shipping costs. So my memoir was $12.99 originally. And after Amazon shipping costs, my book was like over $15, which surprised me because I kept thinking, well, my book is selling for $12.99. I never took the shipping costs into consideration. So when you're pricing your book, you might want to think about shipping costs. I don't think about it that much, to be honest now, but it's just something to be aware of. So how do I get to pricing my book? This is an example. I went on Amazon, and I'm just using two books here. I searched for books on self-publishing. I looked for books that had similar number of pages. I looked for books that had 4 or more stars, and here were 2. So now one of the books is $14.99. The other book is $12.95. I took the average of it. I might start day one pricing my book at $13.97. I might put it at $13.95, or I might round it up to $13.99. That's how I price my book. I stay in a competitive market with what I see other authors doing. I don't spend hours and hours and hours like I did with my first book trying to figure out price. That's how I price my books, based on competition. And then if I feel my price is too low, I raise it. If it's too high, I lower it. So now you've got your book ready. You've gotten your metadata pulled together. How do you get the book to these aggregators, Amazon and others? You upload it either via a PDF, which was the most popular format used when I started out in 2017, but more and more of these aggregators now are accepting Microsoft Word documents for your book. So you can upload either in Word or PDF format. In the ebook world, you're going to be dealing with 2 terms. On the Amazon side, you're going to be dealing with what's called the MOBI, M-O-B-I format, and non-Amazon, with Apple, as an example, Apple Books and others, you're going to be dealing with a format called EPUB. The way to differentiate the two is I'll use a cell phone analogy. MOBI is like Apple's iOS operating system for the iPhone. EPUB is like Android for Motorola, Samsung, and all the other cell phone devices out there. That's the difference. Now, with print books have a format that we're all familiar with. With ebooks can be on cell phones, they can be on iPads, they can be on computers. And because they can be on so many different devices, their formatting is more bland. It's very plain. So all of that great formatting that you may have done when you created your print book, basically EPUB, you have to strip all of that out. So what people do is they generally have to find a way to convert their book from Word format to get it into EPUB format. Now, I would caution you about uploading your print book or your book to an EPUB converter online. I had a situation where I did that with my memoir, and the company that I uploaded to was pirating my book. They were trying to sell it in PDF format. So some of the companies that you will go to, such as Draft2Digital, some of these companies, they will actually do that EPUB conversion for you. But if you find yourself with a company that doesn't do it for you, you may have to go through a manual process, and Smashwords has on their website a guide to how to create your book in EPUB format. So I offer my books in both Mobi, Amazon, and EPUB format because keep in mind, I'm using 8 distributors. I'm not Amazon only. And 8 distributors has worked out incredibly well for me. So, and I would encourage you, we call it going wide in the industry. If you do run into a situation where someone is plagiarizing your book or they pirated it, there's something called a Digital Millennium Copyright Act. It's a form that you can send to that entity to say, hey, you're using my copyrighted information. I'd like for you to take it down off the internet. If that doesn't work, Google has a form that you can go to Google, and they have a form that deals with copyright infringement. And if you can prove that your book is your book, Google will contact the people that have posted your book, and they will either take them down or, you know, Google will take care of it for you. So you have some recourse. Draft to digital are some of these EPUB aggregators that I mentioned earlier. Smashwords, they've been around for a while. StreetLib, excuse me, let me go back. Well, let's see, there we go. Publish Drive is one. When your book is in EPUB format, there are several free tools that you can use so that you can look at it to make sure that it's formatted the way that you want it to look. Caliber is one, and Caliber also has a converter for free. What I have found is most of my books have some type of graphics or pictures in it, and I've found from time to time my images get a little convoluted, but Caliber has a free EPUB converter that you can use. And Adobe Digital's just has an EPUB reader, but Caliber also has an EPUB reader so that you can see the book before it goes out. Amazon will do the conversion for you. They will take your book, convert it over into Mobi format. So Mobi and EPUB are the 2 formats you're going to deal with your eBooks. How do you go about marketing your book? One of the first things I did when I decided to self-publish was I created a company. And one of the reasons why I did that was not only to write off my expenses associated with book purchasing, travel, book shows before the pandemic, but also aggregators. If you do well selling, aggregators report their sales to the IRS. So if your books are really doing well you're making thousands of dollars, you're probably going to want to set up a company because that your revenue is going to get reported to the IRS. I would also encourage you to create a website for your book and use social media to keep people informed about your written works. I'm going to give you a quick look at my website. On my site, I've got all of my books. People can purchase the books directly off the website. I also put the latest information about my books. You can see here was an announcement that I made on my website when I did my virtual book talk.
Eric, we don't see your website.
Oh, you don't see the website?
No, we're still seeing the presentation.
Okay.
You may
No
have
problem.
to stop. You may have to stop the share of the presentation and start the share of the website.
Okay, good point. Okay. Let's see. I don't see the website in the window. Oh, I know why I don't see it. Okay, let's see. There we go. Thank you, Mark. Can you see the website now?
Yep, great.
Okay.
Yep.
So on the website, I've got information about my books, how they're doing. And here was an announcement when I did my virtual book talk for the patrons at Phoenixville Public Library. I gave a little heads up to people. And then on the site, I had the YouTube video listed. Also on my site, people can browse my books. They can learn about me. They can go to any of the books to find out a little bit about the books. I also have a page, this takes a second to load, for my library customers. When I'm contacting libraries, if they want to get a feel for who some of my library customers are, every library that has purchased my book, I've got information about them. I also have created an online store so people can buy my books directly off my website if they'd like to. And I have a news section so that I'm able to take this news information. You remember you saw a blog on my Amazon authors page? That information can feed, I'm feeding it directly off of my website. So these are some of the things that I'm doing to market my book. Now let's see, Mark, I gotta go back to share and go back to the presentation. Okay. Target markets. When you get your book ready and you're getting ready to get it out in the market, try to identify where you think you might have some success selling your books. Initially, I went after family and friends, which we all are probably going to do, but I can tell you that's only the tip of the iceberg. The real opportunity is underneath that water level of your family and friends. So where I invest my time is in areas like I try to figure out demographics, such as for my memoir, single moms, or an industry segment, such as libraries or book clubs, for instance, or retailers. So that's where you want to spend your time, is in areas where you feel your book is going to have the most success. So one of the things I do before I release a book is I start putting out information in advance. With my first self-publishing book, I created a little infomercial, and I held a library event. I updated my website. I made announcement on social media, and I created this little infomercial because at that time, Facebook and Twitter seemed to get more hits off of video. The tools, the social media sites seem to love video. So I was coming out with this first book in 2018 and I wanted a video. So I used a product called Wondershare Filmora, which basically takes a PowerPoint and can make it animated like a video. And I'll just kind of show you what that looked like. I need to go back. So this is an animated, just a PowerPoint presentation. So just about a 40-second little infomercial that what I was trying to do was I was trying to eat up some of the social media sites' video algorithms to get people to find out about my book. Whether that worked or not, I don't know, but I share that with you is because as a self-publisher, you can get as creative as you want in terms of how you want to market your book. And so I tried to use just some inexpensive software to make my marketing information about this particular book, tried to turn it into a video. Just, okay. One of the other things you're gonna wanna do is track your sales. I monitor my sales very closely, and that's how I know that I was profitable in 2020. And I also know that I went from being 100% Amazon in 2017 to now Amazon represents 51% of my sales, and all of my other partners, those other 7 companies, they represent 49% of my sales of all of my books. So I'm going to show you, I might have to do the share again if you don't see it. Mark, do I have to do a share? Can you see the spreadsheet?
No, can't see it yet. There we
This is
go.
just a demonstration spreadsheet. And I don't know because our image is on the right if you can see this or not. But what I do with this information is, let's go to my self-publishing book. So let's say if I change, let's say I sell 10 Kindle eBooks in January, what happens, I don't know if you can see the far right, but over on the far right, that quantity changed. Mark, is there a way to move our, can you see it now? Okay, let me do this. I'm gonna make it 0. So 0 sales. So you see 0 sales in the total, under total. Now I had 10 ebook sales. That total changed to 10. I had 12 paperback sales, and that total changed. Okay. So at the bottom of my spreadsheet, for each of those updates that I made, you can also see I'm calculating the royalties. So I'm actually double checking to make sure that each of these companies, they're paying me properly. That's how close I monitor it, because I view my books as a business. So we'll get back, and I'm going to get back to sharing. I have to move this over so that, there we go. So I also run ads for my books. I initially tried Facebook and Twitter ads. And what I found was I had no way to determine if the ads were the reasons why people were buying my books. So to make this clearer, with Amazon, because they have an online retail store, you can run an ad with Amazon and they will show you if that book sold during the ad that you're running. And it will also, the information will also appear in your sales report. However, because Facebook and Twitter don't have a bookstore, you can run a $20 or $50 ad on Facebook and Twitter, and you will never know if people were buying based on having seen that ad on social media. There's no way to make a correlation. So I pretty much shifted to, I primarily advertise on Amazon only. And I'll show you what I was referring to earlier. So with Amazon, here's an example where I ran an ad. I had 459 clicks, and I used their model called pay per click. So if no one clicks on my ad, then I don't pay anything. But if they click on it, then depending on what I have placed on how much I want to spend on the ad, let's say 54 cents, then that click might cost me 54 cents, just as an example. So on this ad, I had $103.91 in sales, and I only spent $71.22. Now, let me ask you, was that a good ad? Just somebody raise their hand. If you think it was a good ad, say, raise your hand as a yes. You think that I did good on that? Guess what, Bill? I actually got creamed for about $40. Let me tell you why. I had 11 orders and my royalty rate, $3, right? So I made $33 on that ad, but I spent $71. So I lost $38. So don't, when you're selling and advertising on Amazon, don't let that sales number fool you. That's the method, because that sales number is based on your retail sales. Okay, so always look at your orders. Because it really fooled me, Bill. Don't, because I actually got fooled. I said, man, I'm doing great. But then this number didn't match what was in my Amazon, on my Amazon author's sales information. And that's how I found out, Bill. So look at the number of orders. Now, so, okay, I spent $40 maybe over, more than I needed. So what do? then the next ad, what I do is I either adjust one of those keywords that people were clicking on. I might lower the cost of that to say, I only want to spend 32 cents on that. So you lower your cost of that particular keyword, or if there are multiple keywords that people were clicking on that was costing you, that happened to be costing you extra money, you can lower the price of those. So that's just some strategy type things that I try to do with my advertising. And I've gotten it to a point now where I don't lose my shirt on ads. I mean, I've had a couple that where I've lost maybe $15 or $20, and I've had some where I've made money. So, but now, is all of this self-publishing stuff rewarding? I had a library in 2019 that purchased several of my books, and I sent them a thank you letter, and it was Howard County Library System in Maryland. In 2013, they were the American Library Association's Library of the Year. The CEO, the president and CEO of the company, took the time to write me a thank you note back. And that, when I got that email, I said, all of this self-publishing, the work, the effort, trying to do everything right, trying to do my due diligence and my research, trying to understand how libraries purchase, trying to make my books acceptable for library purchase, all that work paid off. Just when you get a letter back like that, that's the kind of thing that keeps me motivated about self-publishing. So I hope I haven't gone over my time. I've gone over about 7 minutes or so, or actually maybe a little more. And my apologies for that. But I want to thank you for your time, and I'm just going to open up the floor for questions.
Thanks so much, Eric. That was a lot to share, and really appreciate that. One question that I have, though,
Okay.
you briefly touched on reviews. Now, libraries in particular rely heavily on reviews in choosing what we put in our collection.
Right.
How important to you is getting a review, and do you have any tips for people to get reviews?
There are several sources for book reviews. Kirkus is a book reviewer that libraries tend to look at. What I found, Mark, was Kirkus reviews cost about $425. When I first started self-publishing, that was a real stretch for me because I had a budget of like $1,000 that I had set aside for like everything that I wanted to do. So I was outside of my budget. Some libraries I've seen, they like to see when self-publishers have reviews off of Goodreads. But my thought process was, if I understood a library's collection development policy and the criteria that libraries have, if I could get my book in a library, to me, a library is more credible, is the most credible review source of any in the world. So that's why I shared that page on my website where I have 127 library customers, so that I could share with other libraries that their peers are buying my books. So my strategy has been more so try to build credibility. And if you build credibility, share that credibility with others, Mark. But if folks don't want to go that route, you can go to people and pay for reviews. Now, here's the thing. Fortunately, my books have done well, but what if I go and I spend $425, and let's say on a scale of 1 to 5, my book gets rated a 2. Now, what do I do with that review? I can't give it to a library, and I've just invested $425. So that was sort of a dilemma for me, Mark. But yeah, there are companies, Publishers Weekly, there are resources for you where you can go get reviews. And to Mark's point, if I probably had gotten a Kirkus review, particularly for my memoir, I could probably be in 3 or 4 times, perhaps more libraries. But that was sort of the path that I went down, Mark. Hope that
Yeah,
helps.
great, good answer. And it was the list of libraries that have your books that kind of persuaded me to invest in your book
And
as
Mark,
well.
and part of that I learned during my sales career at IBM. IBM was big on reference selling. And my thought process when I started contacting libraries in 2018 was librarians tend to know one another. They may attend seminars or events together. I felt the library community was a small community, even though it's a huge community. You know, there are probably close to 100,000 libraries in the US, right? So with that mindset, I said, if I can gain the confidence of a library to get my book in and then begin to build on that confidence, the more librarians that libraries that I can share with other libraries, it will give them a comfort level that he must be making he must be writing quality works. Some of these libraries on here are recognizable to me. And so the reference selling, I think, has been a big help to me, Mark, personally.
Anyone else have any questions for Eric? Please feel free to unmute yourselves.
Hi, I have a question. Hi.
Sure. Hi, is it Valenta?
Valentina.
Valentina, hi. Thank you for joining.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed your talk. I was curious, do you have to do your own cover design, or how does that work?
Oh, wow, great question. What I've done is I try to come up with an idea about my cover and what I want it to look like. And then I go online and I use a resource called Fiverr, Fiverr.com. And Fiverr is a freelance website. And so you can type in book cover and there will be hundreds of perhaps of freelancers that have book covers, and they will have samples of their work. And you can look at the type of work that they do and you can decide on who you want to go to. And I use Fiverr to do my book covers. I use a freelancer off of Fiverr. That's how I pick them. That is a great question.
Well,
and to give you an example, I've spent less than $100 probably on my book covers. And then I tend to leave these guys a tip for doing the work, Valentina. But that's where I go to get my book covers. And there are other places as well. But that is a fantastic question because, yeah, those are important pieces because your book cover goes a long way towards getting the book off the shelf, right?
Thank you.
No, thank you for the question.
Hi, Mr. Simmons, Diana.
Hi, Diana.
Thank you so much for sharing what you know today. I have 4 pages of notes.
Oh, wow.
And I got a couple laughs.
Okay.
And I do have a question.
Okay.
Is there still a stigma about the quality of the book if it's only offered as an ebook, or has that kind of gone away?
I'm seeing a shift, and to give you an idea, if you start, Googling self-publishing, how is the self-publishing industry doing? I think you can see that there's a lot of positivity, and the industry is on an upswing. The pandemic hit, and actually it helped self-publishers, and particularly ebooks, because people were at home and they were buying ebooks. And my ebook sales actually went up from April through about July. My ebook sales were just better than they normally do because of the pandemic. So if you just only have an ebook, I don't think that would be an issue. The biggest thing is do your very best to have a quality piece of work that you put out there. Don't cut corners with the quality of what people are going to be reviewing and reading.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I should have mentioned earlier, Diana, don't, taking notes is great, but both, Self-Publishers Toolkit is now in the library.
Yeah.
And you can use that, or the books I've tried to price Self-Publishers Toolkit to where on the retail side, it's 30% off of buying the self-publishing book and the library book separately. So I've tried to mark it down to make it attractive. I actually have it on sale on Amazon as we speak.
I'll check it out. Thanks.
So yeah, so those use the resources, but go ahead. Somebody else have a question?
Hi, Mr. Simmons.
Yes.
Hi, great talk. It was so good to hear you. You're so inspirational to us. My daughter
ma'am.
and I just finished our first book.
Oh, outstanding. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's been 20 plus years in the making.
Well, right. You went through what I went through, right?
Yes, yes. But it's a young adult fantasy. It's going to be a series because I thought I didn't want to go so big and not know if anybody was even going to want to read it. So I'm
Right.
doing it in installments.
That's
But
outstanding. That's a great strategy.
Thank you. But you had mentioned going wide
Mhm.
and using multiple publishers. So we were distributors. Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
So we were thinking of doing Amazon. Can we also do Barnes and Noble?
You can. Now, if you use Amazon for your ebook, Lynn,
Yes.
if you sign up for what they call Kindle Unlimited,
Yes.
they will lock you in for 90 days.
Okay.
So while you're under that 90-day period, and I did that with all of my books, I went ahead and started with Amazon. I went through the 90-day period because they're the world's largest bookstore, and I let them have exclusivity, so to speak, for 90 days. After
Okay.
90 days, I did not renew Kindle Unlimited, and then I started distributing to everyone else.
Okay.
So you can either do that, or you can say, no, I'm not going to do Kindle Unlimited and make it exclusive to Amazon for 90 days. I'm just going to upload it to Amazon, and I'm just going to just let them put it on the shelf, and I'm going to go to Barnes and Noble at the same time and others.
Okay.
So
Do you
those
get
are your
that?
choices.
Okay. Okay. That was very helpful. Thank you so much.
Oh, no, thank you, Lynn. And best of luck to you.
Thank you.
Keep us
You-
posted on how you do.
I will, because your timing was just like dead on. I saw the ad for this and I was like, oh my goodness, we just got it done right before Christmas. So
That's
we
great.
have a friend who's doing our book cover for us.
Okay, good.
And other friends have proofread for us.
Great.
So we're very excited that we're on our way.
Have you decided on a price yet? Did the pricing information I shared with you help?
Yes, it did, because that we're not entirely sure of. So I like your strategy.
Right. Yeah, use others, use the competition, and so that you'll be in the same ballpark. Because if you don't know, you could be either over or under
Correct.
price-wise. Right.
Yes. Well, thank you so much.
Oh, no, thank you for attending. This is great.
Thank you. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you guys, and much luck on your book.
Thank
Just
you.
wishing you much success. That's great.
We'll keep you posted.
Please do.
Will.
Mark knows how to get in touch with me.
Okay.
Yeah, and please let us know about your book too, Lynn.
Oh, I absolutely will. Thank you.
You're more than welcome. Any other questions? And Mark, to your point, there was a lot there, and hopefully I didn't overwhelm everyone, but the good news is you've got the book available to you at Phoenixville. So take advantage of that. And if it's heavily checked out, you've got a variety of resources. The book is available. All of my books are available in over 50 booksellers. You know, it's around the top places where you would buy books. More than likely you could find one of mine. So.
Anyone else for Eric tonight? All right. I think you did good.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Really great having you again. And thanks for sharing your wealth of expertise in the self-publishing world.
Right.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us tonight.
Thank you
Take care.
again. All right. Bye-bye. Thank you for the great questions, guys.
Thank you, Eric. It was very informative.
Oh, thank you so much, Bill. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. And have a very happy and safe New Year.
Same to each and every one of you all, and yours as well.
Stay healthy.
You as well, Bill. Thank you.
Trying damn
All
hard.
right. Thank you. Take care, everybody.
What'd you say, Bill?
I said, I'm trying damn hard to stay healthy.
Oh, great. You do that. Do that. Keep trying.
All right, take care now.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thanks
Good.
again.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.